Holy crap. This series has certainly gotten a little wild in regards to the amount of penalties, the amount of non-calls, the amount of everything. This goes both ways, though. I mean, obviously, I'm a Boston fan, but just for the NHL, for hockey, when there are missed calls in the playoffs and then the league says nothing about them, this is something that's just like so disappointing as a fan of just hockey as a whole. Now, I'm a huge Boston fan. The second the Bruins are eliminated from the playoffs, my interest in hockey goes down big time. It's just, I watch hockey to watch my team win. I will still watch the following rounds, but my interest just isn't there. And I'm sure that goes for many other people that are fans of their teams. Just the interest isn't there, right? But what we saw in game 3, Marchand getting hurt, the initial angle that everybody has seen, the initial angle. Everyone thinks Marchand's a sissy. He's approaching Sam Bennett to hit him, and then Sam Bennett just reverse hits him, and then Marchand goes down. The only thing about him going down there, everyone's just assuming that Marchand can't take a hit. I mean, he gets hit. He's a small guy, but he can take a hit. We know that. We saw him lay out Kachuk in game 2, I believe it was. He's a tough guy on the ice. We know he has a history of being dirty, but at the same time, this is a confusing thing as a fan of hockey. Marchand clearly goes down and he's rocked. I myself watch tons of MMA. That's probably my second sport next to hockey. And when a guy gets rocked, you can see it. You see their body go limp, and that's exactly what happened to Marchand. So it just seemed odd that his body went limp. And so, of course, minutes before the game starts, we see the actual angle of Sam Bennett hitting Marchand. And sure, he hits him, but what's the first thing that he does before he actually makes contact? It's his right hand holding his stick, which makes his punch so much harder when you're holding an object. And it's just a jab right to the chin. Marchand goes down. Of course, he wasn't expecting it, right? The league does nothing. We hear nothing, see nothing. I mean, of course, as a fan, I want to see them go after Sam Bennett. But Boston ultimately have to win a hockey game. They ended up taking so many penalties. I wish they just would have gone at Sam Bennett and just taken some kind of crazy penalty as a whole, but Boston instead just took a number of crappy penalties. Some shouldn't have been, sure, I guess, but ultimately they got penalized so many times, and that's ultimately why they lost the game. They're not able to establish their offense when they're constantly playing defense, killing off penalties. That's obvious. Again, this can be looked at like a homer view if you want. I'm a big Bruins fan. But for hockey, we've seen Sam Bennett do the exact same thing last year to Matthew Nyes. I don't like the Leafs at all. But for hockey, how are we seeing this time and time again and nothing is happening to this guy? I look at this situation a lot like just say the legal system, okay? Say a criminal gets attacked by a criminal. The legal system still has to do something about it, right? And if they miss that criminal activity happen, they have the opportunity to go back and look at it and eyewitnesses, whatever else. And ultimately what they can do is they can do something about it. What I find in the NHL that is so lame, like this is just so stupid. How can the league see the angle? So we saw the angle minutes before the game, which we should then assume that the NHL saw the angle either immediately after the game or they saw it hours and hours and hours before the game, yet they still did nothing. So we know that they looked at that and they just said, well, it's just too late. There's nothing we can do about it. It's just too late. But a criminal committed a crime. Doesn't matter who it was against. They committed a crime, so they should have to pay for that. Sam Bennett shouldn't have played yesterday. So, of course, the game continues on. Sam Bennett ends up tying the game on the power play. Boston shouldn't have taken the penalty for sure, but tying the game on a power play. A lot of people are upset that it's multiple penalties. I don't really care that he ended up cross-checking Coyle into Swayman. All to me that matters is that he pushed Coyle into Swayman. We see it in the playoffs all the time. These guys, they try not to do it to each other's heads, but they're slashing each other's legs. I saw McAvoy yesterday slashing at Barkov's legs in the corner. All this stuff happens all the time, and it shouldn't, but it does. Ultimately, net front battle, Sam Bennett cross-checks Coyle into Swayman. Again, the cross-check is not something I care about. It's ultimately just a push with his stick. It's not like a dirty cross-check to hurt. He's just using it to push Coyle. But he pushes Coyle into Swayman. And they ruled it a goal because they considered Swayman was able to make the save regardless of where Coyle was in his crease. Like, look at this photo. Look at the photo. In what planet, in what world, who is looking at this and thinking, yes, Swayman can get across. He should be able to push across to save that puck. His own player is on top of him. I just don't understand it. So anyway, it's kind of a frustrating thing because ultimately this is hockey. This BS happens all the time. You know that the Bruin players are frustrated, but they got to win a game, right? They ultimately have to win the next game. And I knew this series was going to be tough for Boston because Florida's just built better. They're just built better top to bottom. They have a great goalie. I would argue we have a better goalie. overall right now. Just as far as puck movement, as far as the overall game plan, Florida's just a better team. Even those big losses, the game gets away from them, sure. They're in a large way beating themselves in those games. So it's a frustrating thing when you look at yesterday's game, knowing that Boston, sure, they could have been better, but they're losing on opportunities where the refs are just making the call wrong. It's clear as day. You ask any person who watches hockey, from a casual to a professional, that's just a clear interference, right? I believe it says in Rule 69.1 that talks specifically on what we should have seen called on that play that Sam Bennett made. And I will say, I just want to close this by saying I find it very irritating in the hockey world where these guys are so limited to what they can say because the media can swirl things however they want. So they just say the most obvious things. Like the Bruins locker room after the fact, they'll say like, you know what, we saw it differently, but we got to ultimately come out and win the next game. Although that's a good attitude, you then see Sam Bennett say things like, well, I obviously didn't have time to think about punching him in the head. Okay, well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life because your hand came up. So your hand hitting his chin, even if they're not asking, did you do that on purpose? They're asking your thoughts about it. Yeah, you know what? It happened. It was just so fast in the moment. I by mistake, I hit him in the face, and that's my bad. You don't see any of that. He'll just say things like, well, it's just a hockey play. Like, what does that even mean? Can someone clarify what it means when someone says, yeah, it's just a hockey play? Like, I just don't understand it. It's a hockey play that you should be suspended for. It's a hockey play that you should be fined $5,000 and suspended at least a game for. So I'm so confused what that means. If someone can clarify, that'd be great. Regardless, it's a frustrating thing. Boston has to win the next game, otherwise they're done. And as the Bruins fans, it's frustrating, but this is hockey. This is what we watch. We love our team. Sam Bennett is the new rat of the NHL. And if the Florida Panthers end up getting past Boston and go on to play the New York Rangers, just know, Sam Bennett, that Matt Rempe is waiting for you. I look forward to seeing that, and I look forward to seeing Jacob Trouba spear you through the boards, if that's the case.